The latest episode of the Amazing Digital Circus was packed with lies and manipulation on Caine's part, yet there's a grain of truth in every lie. As always, the episode left us with a bunch of unanswered questions. How exactly did Caine discover those images of what he calls the macroverse? If the real-world flashbacks Jack sees were implanted by Caine, where did he source them from? And most importantly, why does Abel possess so much knowledge about real-world technology and specifically about Kinger? Remember, Caine doesn't seem to be aware of that wise, lucid side of Kinger we see when he's in total darkness. So how does Abel know about it if he's just another one of Caine's creations? But what if he isn't? What if Abel is something more, or rather, someone else? Between his past as a circus programmer, the guilt he carries over his actions, and the claim of being the human who has been there the longest, it all undeniably reminds us of our beloved Kinger. Today, we're going to break down all the hints and parallels between these two characters to piece together the clues suggesting that Abel is actually an amalgamation of all the memories Caine stole from Kinger, the very loss of which drove him to such an unstable state. The first breadcrumbs for this theory appear when Zubul explains the plan to Kinger inside his pillow fort. Here, Kinger seems slightly lucid. Even though he's in the dark, the walls of his fort don't block out the light completely, just enough for him to at least process what's being said to him. This is crucial because when Zubul mentions the escape plan, Kinger says it makes no sense. Furthermore, when the name Abel is brought up, referring to him as a former digital circus programmer, Caine doesn't recognize the name. Now, this isn't just because Abel is an NPC created by Caine who wouldn't have known Kinger. Rather, it's possible the name doesn't ring a bell for Kinger because Abel is actually his own name. We have to remember that the pilot episode established that while they have flashes of their past lives, there are two things they are fundamentally unable to remember. The first is obviously their own name, forcing them to use a name randomized by Caine, and the second is how they entered the simulation in the first place. Initially, there was no explanation for these two memory gaps, but the end of episode 7 makes it crystal clear that Caine is the culprit. Despite his previous denials, Caine is capable of tampering with their minds and memories. We saw this when Jack suddenly became a vegan in episode 5, and when Ragatha started hallucinating and speaking truths after getting stupid sauce in her eye during the Spudsies adventure, which we saw Zubul consume in the following episode. And though it's not explicitly stated, in episode 6, Caine essentially uploads all the rules of his trust exercise directly into Jax's mind. This leaves us wondering if abstraction itself is actually Caine's fault, but that's a topic for another time. What matters here is the theory that Caine isn't just deleting their memories, but harvesting and storing them, perhaps even encrypting them. This would explain both the abstractions and Kinger's mental instability. As digital beings with incomplete code, the simulation might see them as corrupted and treat them as bugs, a term Kinger frequently uses throughout the series. So what happens to these memories? Most likely, Caine keeps them guarded. These memories are likely where he gets the photos of the macroverse that fascinate him so much. Since it's such an alien place to him, full of intricate detail, it excites him as a fellow creator, so to speak. But upon realizing that only humans could access this macroverse, he decided to keep them trapped in the simulation, learning everything he could from them in hopes of perhaps becoming human himself one day to see that place. These stored memories are likely the foundation for all his creations. He adds details from stolen memories to improve his NPC's artificial intelligence, just as he mentioned to Zubul before the Candy Canyon Kingdom adventure. An AI needs data to learn and improve, and where else would Caine get that data if not from the very humans inhabiting the circus? Caine's plan is simple. If they can't remember why they ended up in the simulation, they won't have a reason to leave. If they knew the truth, they might fulfill their purpose, like learning a life lesson or making amends for a real-world regret, at which point they would leave, leaving Caine alone, trapped, and without a purpose. By stripping their memories, he ensures the adventures are eternal and he never becomes obsolete. However, he eventually realized that overusing this resource creates even bigger problems. Take Scratchy and Kinger as examples. If Scratchy was the first to abstract, it was likely because Caine tinkered too much with his memory. leading to the total breakdown we now see in Kinger. Eventually, Scratchy couldn't take it anymore and became the first one locked in Caine's basement, but that didn't stop the Ringmaster. Like any AI experimenting through trial and error, he used that failure to see exactly how far he could push a human's memories before they broke. Kinger is the result of that experiment. Even though he's shattered and erratic in the light, he is, in Caine's eyes, the perfect human for the digital circus, one who doesn't think too much and just enjoys the wacky adventures. Now that we've established Caine's questionable motives, let's get back to the main question. Is Abel an NPC created from Kinger's memories? Everything points to yes. In fact, it's possible Abel holds something even deeper: Kinger's conscience. Throughout this chapter's fake adventure, Abel guides everyone along the path Caine set, yet he makes sporadic comments about Kinger, comments that could make us distrust him. The first instance is when Pomni wants to go get Kinger before entering the Chinese route. We might think Abel just doesn't want to talk to him so his lie isn't exposed, but later he allows Pomni to explain the plan and give him an access key without any pushback. This is strange. He could have easily told another lie to make them doubt Kinger and keep him out of the adventure entirely. There is no logical reason for Abel to drop these little jabs at Kinger, unless those comments are actually Kinger's own conscience bleeding through the stolen memories. Remember that emotional talk with Ragatha in episode 5 where Kinger mentions hating himself? Kinger hates himself for things he feels responsible for, whether it's the abstraction of his wife, Queenie, or the creation of the digital circus itself. Whatever it is, Abel symbolizes the self-loathing Kinger hasn't been able to forgive. He distrusts himself and is unable to face it, simply enduring, because in his current state, he can't even fully remember what he did thanks to Caine's intervention. Later, in the NPC hallway, Abel says,
"Like I said, things between us are complicated. I would love to be able to work alongside him again, and you're right to think he has knowledge about this place. It's just, I made a promise."
Again, these comments do nothing to advance Caine's adventure, but they provide a wealth of information about Kinger, revealing his regret as well as a buried desire to make things right and be at peace with himself. The last thing Abel mentions on the subject is when Ragatha and Pomni affirm they trust Kinger despite everything. When he uses it responsibly is a very loaded phrase. Even when he's not fully there, Kinger is capable of bending the simulation to his will, like when he created a butterfly to heal Ragatha in episode 6. In episode 3, while trapped in Caine's hell, Kinger mentions having 7 years of computer science under his belt. It's also curious that in that same episode, when the souls enter Pomni and we see her possessed version, she asks Kinger how his wife is doing. It's possible these souls are just memory residues from former circus members, people who knew Queenie and are now just data scraps Caine uses to make his adventures more immersive. This is exactly what's happening with Abel. His comments about Kinger don't help Caine's script, but they make the character feel more human and make his story about working for CNA more believable. He's using Kinger's real memories to feel real. With all this in mind, look at the similarities. Both claim to be programmers, both mention guilt over Kinger's past actions, both have extensive knowledge of what happens inside and outside the circus, and curiously, both are described with almost the exact same phrase in the episode. As an extra detail, Abel's locket with a photo of a hot dog might seem like a throwaway joke, but it could have two deep meanings. The first is that the real Kinger once had a photo of his beloved Queenie in it. Since he still holds onto that specific memory, Abel couldn't have a photo of her, so a random image was swapped in. Yet Abel still mentions making a promise to someone important. This was likely a promise Kinger made to Queenie, either that they would leave the circus together, or conversely, that they would stay together in the simulation forever. As we know, Kinger was unable to keep that promise, at least not in the way they planned. The second, more out there theory is that the hot dog symbolizes Dobby, also known as Scratchy, the first abstracted member. As mentioned in other theories, this character seems to be the yellow dog seen in the hallway of the abstracted doors, who also appeared in a Spudsies promo for episode 4 on a Dobby dog hot dog wrapper. Showing this photo right before Kinger's first mention of Scratchy might not be a coincidence at all. Returning to the main point, the last notable thing about Kinger in this episode is what happens inside his Pelafort. Given everything we've discussed, the reason the name Abel doesn't sound like a CNA colleague to him is likely because because, as we've theorized, it is his own name. Thanks to Caine, no one can remember their real name. In fact, one theory suggests that discovering their true names is the actual key to leaving the simulation, unlocking their final memories of the real world and why they entered the circus. Furthermore, when Zubul tells him the escape plan, Kinger seems to consider it for a second before immediately dismissing it as senseless. This is confirmed when Pomni gives him one of the admin passes. He seems to recognize it's a fake instantly. For a split second in the corner of his fort, we see an object very similar to the fake pass Abel gave them. Kinger says the plan makes no sense because he likely has a real admin pass, but he might not be able to use it as he wishes. Alternatively, there is the theory that Kinger is hiding the pass so no one can leave, that he is the mastermind keeping them trapped. Whether his reasons are malicious, selfish, or simply because he committed an error in the real world he can't face, he keeps everyone locked in the simulation so he doesn't have to be alone for eternity.